Okay, wonderful. So we are recording and we are going to get started with our finishing strong and starting well workshop for tonight. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have as we go through the PowerPoint tonight. I want this to be very comfortable, conversational. If someone has a question, just feel free to stop me and ask away. So I'm going to open us in prayer and then we can jump in. Heavenly Father, God, I just thank you for this opportunity to gather. I thank you that we're able to be together tonight virtually. And I just pray, Lord, that the things that are said and the things that are learned would just enable us to be better stewards of our time and our resources, and that it would just be glorifying to you, and that we would have more margin in our lives, that we'd be able to just rest and just really practice Sabbath and just be renewed and refreshed as we transition from this subterm to the next. And I just pray, Lord, that for all the students who are here and who couldn't be here, that you would strengthen them in their studies and just bless them as they wrap up their terms. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so tonight, here is our agenda. So we are going to be just going through a number of things. It's kind of a little bit of everything for tonight. So in any exercise or college class or writing assignment, it's important that we define our terms. And so tonight we're even going to be defining our terms when it comes to what it means to succeed academically. Like, what does that really mean? What does that look like? We're going to have some time for reflection, thinking about what worked well in this past subterm, what are things that we want to repeat and emulate in the next subterm, and what are some things maybe that didn't work so well that we want to leave behind. Um, we're going to look at some different resources that the Ally Center has, like the course calendar, the time audit, the ideal week, resources that will help you as global AE students to make the most of your time. These 8-week courses can be just really demanding and rigorous, and it's important that we are planning well and planning ahead and using really all of our time well to the glory of God, and that we're able to get our get the coursework done. And then we're going to transition into just some general practical tips of time management and self-care, and then we're going to make a plan moving forward for the next subterm. So I'm excited for all that. So when we think about the question of academic success, or the term really, there's so many things that actually contribute to academic success. So I think it's easy in these conversations to feel like it's just so much of like do, and make this new checklist and buy this new planner and organize your calendar in such and such a way. But I don't really want that to be the focus for tonight. I mean, we are going to be talking about calendars and planning and organization, but we have to realize that as believers, we're coming from this from a biblical worldview. And so we know that our value is not in what we do, that we don't have to prove our worth, that we don't have to prove ourselves, that our value is in God. It's in who God has made us to be. It's in his love for us and his care for us, and us being made in the image of God. And so we can rest in that, and we don't have to strive. And it's just so life-giving to know that we are not the sum total of our productivity and our success and our grades, but that we are if we put our trust in Christ, we're children of God. And that's really just a wonderful, hopeful thing. So when we think about academic success, we want to prioritize balance. We want to know that a life well lived is a balanced life, a life that has margin, that isn't stuffed to the brim completely, that we want to have some open space in our calendars. We don't want there to just be so much fullness and jam packing everything into every little 15-minute increment that we're just like bursting at the seams. Because, when life circumstances happen, we need some flexibility. So something else that's really important is to know that life is about working and playing. So we weren't designed only to work. We were also designed to enjoy recreation and art and beauty and nature and exercise. And there's so many wonderful things in life that God has given us to enjoy. So as believers, we are going to be good stewards of what God's called us to do. So we're going to be hard workers. We're going to have a strong work ethic, but we're also going to play. We're going to have fun and freedom, because That's what God has for us. So those are kind of some things to think about that frame our understanding of academic success. Okay, and then lastly, when it comes to prioritizing our priorities, we want to remember that God has called us to Sabbath. So, all the way from Genesis, we see God made Sabbath. So, on the seventh day, he rested after creating everything in 6 days. He rested on the seventh day, and he's called us to do the same thing. So, as we think about planning for the next term, we're going to think about really prioritizing Sabbath rest. And then something else that's really important when it comes to academic success is having what's called a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. So this was pioneered by a scholar named Carol Dweck, and she talked about how when we think about intelligence or ability, so many people think of those things in terms of a fixed mindset of like, either I am smart or I'm not smart, either I'm good at sports or I'm not good at sports. And this is just, I'm born with this. It's just set, it's never going to change, and there's no sense in me trying to change it. Whereas a growth mindset, which is what we want to have, a growth mindset, it's about trying. And so it's like, maybe I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I am working towards that. I'm putting in the effort. And maybe I don't fully understand this complex concept that my professor is talking about, but I'm going to keep on working at it because I'm not limited by where I'm at right now. I know that I can grow, that I can change, that I can learn, and that there are challenges that I can overcome. And so we want to always think about having a growth mindset and not just thinking about like, well, a common one that we hear is like, oh, I'm just not good at math. I'm just not good at math. I'm not going to try. I can't do it. But we want to think like there are certain skills within the practice of mathematics, and we can build on our skills, build on those things, and work towards our goals. Okay, something else, some other things that contribute to academic success is effective planning. So, oh, thank you for the encouragement, Linda. I appreciate that. So we want to be effective planners and stewards of our time. So, but with that, so as I was kind of saying, we don't just want a list of to-dos. I think so often, kind of as I said earlier, some of these some talks on time management and things and just general life planning can just feel like um it's important that we do all of these things and buy all the calendars and all these things. And those are tools that we use to work towards our goals, but we also have to know that our plans have to be adaptable to our life circumstances, because the reality is that a lot of us have full busy lives with responsibilities. Many of our LBC adult students are parents or caretakers of aging parents. They have a lot going on. Many of them work full time, are in ministry, are volunteering, are doing so many things, and it's wonderful. But we have to know that we have to adapt our plan to our life circumstances. It's not a one size fits all approach. Even when it comes to individuals, different seasons of our lives are going to be um, more demanding or less so. And we just have to be able to ebb and flow with what's in front of us, what's on our plate, and control the controllables and just submit everything to the Lord, really. Even the things that we can quote unquote control, it's really in the Lord's hands. So we just have to steward what we have well. So we have to kind of find this balance of sticking to our plans, but also adapting them to work in our particular circumstances. Another key to this is knowing ourselves. So what works for one person might not work for you. What works for your friend might not work for you. What works for even your spouse might not work for you when it comes to planning out your term, when it comes to reflecting and moving forward. Hi, welcome.
Hey, Lauren.
Good. Okay, something else that's important when we think about academic success is the importance of living in community. So, for those of you who are doing school 100% online, it's important that we're living in community. I mean, even for students who are going to one of the sites or the Lancaster campus, it's still really important that we're surrounding ourselves with, excuse me, loved ones, classmates, professors, friends, colleagues, that we're not doing this alone. We weren't called to live the Christian life alone. We weren't called to um, live alone at all. We're supposed to be in relationships. We have relationships with our friends, with our family members, with other people at our church. We're supposed to be um, with others. So it's important to not be isolated and to just really be surrounded by good, solid community. Okay, so when it comes to finishing strong, so if we're thinking about this current term that we're really wrapping up, we're nearing the end of week 7. Um, what does it mean to you to finish the term strong and well? I'd love to hear some of your ideas. And feel free to type them in the chat if you don't want to turn on your mic. When we think about this term, what does it mean to finish strong and to finish well? Any ideas? Okay, so when we think about finishing the term strong and well, a lot of people want to have a sense of accomplishment going into week 8. So a lot of major papers are due this week 7 going into week 8, and there's just like a sense of it's good to look back and reflect on all the things that you've learned, all the different concepts you've gotten to engage with, the readings you've been able to engage with. You've done a lot this term, and it's important to look back and reflect on that and not just submit the final paper and never think about it again, but to really consider the ways in which you've grown in this term. I see some answers. So being committed. Yeah. So staying committed until the end of the term. Yeah. All the way through. Some people kind of like to just give up at the end or just kind of scrape by, but it's helpful to, when we want to be finishing strong and finishing well, it's good to stay strong until the end and to still be doing our very best on our assignments, doing things unto the Lord, and glorifying Him in our studies. Christina said it would mean to finish your assignments on time and to the best of your ability. Absolutely. So, continuing to steward our time well, stewarding our resources well, so that we're respectful of the professor's time because he or she has, a significant amount of grading to do at this point in the term. And to the best of our ability, getting those assignments in and doing them really well. Great answers. Yeah. So we want to be, finishing well academically and also just remembering all of the things that we've learned and the ways that we've grown. Very good. So I want each of you to take time, just a minute or two. You can continue this activity after we're done the workshop, to just really take time to reflect of what worked well in this term. So when we think about a work-life balance, the general stress level that you had, time management and academic success. So if we think about work-life balance, kind of some of the things we've been addressing so far in this workshop, thinking about am I doing my work well, but then when I'm done working, am I able to rest and relax and feel really rejuvenated going back into work, and that there's a general balance there. When we think about our stress levels, are we just constantly chronically stressed out all the time, just feeling overwhelmed day in and day out? That's a really high level of stress, and that's really not sustainable long term. And so we all have stressful days, and, finishing up a big assignment can oftentimes be stressful, or studying and taking an exam, but we shouldn't be living at a level of chronic stress. We want our lives to be less stressful, more peaceful, and that we're managing those tasks. So stress in certain amounts can be good. It can help us, study for the exam and get the paper finished, but we don't want to chronically be living with really high levels of stress. So we want to kind of reflect on, like, okay, like, how was our stress level for this term? We think about our time management skills. So what worked well in terms of managing our time? Were we able to complete our assignments well? And did we feel satisfied with how we did on those assignments? And then in terms of academic success related to that, were we able to complete all of our assignments within a timely fashion and really learn from the material, not just absorb enough information so that we can get the grade we want, but that we're really learning to become scholars, that we as students are taking the things that we're learning, internalizing them, understanding them, and applying them to whatever field we're in or that we're striving to be in. And then we also want to think about, where are there opportunities to improve those levels. So just take a minute or two and just jot down some ideas if you have a pen and paper nearby, or kind of make a mental note. Just kind of think about, like, what did I do well that I want to continue with, and where are some areas that I want to improve. And feel free to either share some things or drop them in the chat um, as you work through this list. So I'll just give you just a minute or two to think through that. Okay, does anyone have anything that they want to share? Either tips that have worked really well for them, or areas in which they're maybe seeking more accountability, or wanting to improve on certain opportunities that you recognize in your life. Oh, I apologize for, I'm just gonna I got an email, so I'm not sure if there was someone who's having trouble accessing the call tonight. Oh, no, that's an unrelated email. Okay, I'll go back to sharing the screen. Okay, does anyone have anything they want to share about about their personal reflection? And it's okay if you don't, because I understand, because a lot of times these things can be more personal. So no pressure. But if anyone had any, like, tips or things that have worked for them as a student, feel free to share now. Okay, all right. Well, keep your list nearby, because we'll continue to kind of reevaluate, and I'll give you some tools tonight that will help you continue to plan well for the next subterm. So there's a really great tool through the Ally Center that's called the course calendar. And so we'll look at it on the next slide, and it's a big document calendar that gives you kind of like a layout of your 8-week course. So Monday through Sunday for your 8-week course of and you can mark out where you have things that are due, where you have just certain assignments that are due on those days. So then you can plan accordingly. It's also important to not just put the major deadlines on the calendar, but also work backwards. So if you have a major research paper, you want to figure out, okay, what's the day that I want to have my final draft done so that I can do proofreading and editing? When do I want to have my first rough draft done? When do I want to have my outline done? Thesis statement, research, topic chosen, all those things kind of working backwards so that you have enough margin to actually effectively accomplish that task without being totally stressed out. So, yeah, you can map out your whole term, which is really useful, especially if you're taking more than one class. I mean, even if you're just taking one, that's still a tremendous amount of work. And so it's good to map out however many classes you're taking. And actually, it's probably best to print out or download two calendars, one for each class, just because the squares aren't huge. And so you could either do two course calendars for your two classes, or you could put it on one and maybe highlight them in different colors for the different courses to keep everything organized. So when you plan out each week, you'll know what you must accomplish in each week of the term. And just as a friendly, kind of funny reminder is the due date is not the due it date when it comes to assignments, especially those longer ones. You really want to make sure to be planning ahead and planning accordingly. So this is a picture of the Global Academic Course Calendar. This is available as a download to you. So I'm going to give you a link at the end of the workshop that's going to take you to the page on the Ally Center website where all of these documents can be downloaded, and you can edit them on your computer, or you can print them out and handwrite it, whatever works best for you and your style. So yeah, it's great. You have weeks 1 through 8, and you can really, for those who are more visual learners, it can just be really helpful to be like, okay, like what is everything that's expected of me in weeks 1 through 8? So then there's no surprises. There's not, I didn't know we had an annotated bibliography in addition to our research paper. You can really fully plan ahead and know exactly what's expected of you and when. So here's another helpful little graphic about um, global online AE student courses. So when we think about the weeks, you generally have about 17 hours of coursework to do, plus your 1 hour of Zoom time with your professor. Excuse me. And so when you're planning out your weeks, you want to plan accordingly because 18 hours is a big chunk of time. And so you want to plan out, especially in relation to when you have different assignments due, when you want to be planning to accomplish your work. So this is just kind of a helpful visual to note that. So related to that, the Ally Center has this great resource, which is a time audit. And so this is, I think, a really good, after doing the course calendar, doing this time audit of being like, okay, what does my schedule really look like? What look like when I boil down like everything in my life. So how many hours of sleep do I need each night? Some people need 7, 8, 9, it just kind of depends on what works best for you. You know yourself well. So multiply that out by 7 days of the week. Number of hours for meals. So this includes prepping your meals, cooking your meals, cleanup, times 7. Number of hours per day spent on errands, morning and evening routines, leisure recreational activities, work, your commute to and from work, and then church commitments, sports, etc., and then time with friends and family, and your hours of class per week. And so if you add all of that up, and there's 168 hours in a week, you can see your total hours of activities and your hours left to study, which can just be very eye-opening to see like, oh wow, I have, you know, X number of hours of commitments. Like I'm going to need to be really diligent with my time because I only have so many hours left to study. So it's just good to kind of take inventory of what your life looks like in this present season, what your commitments look like, what are the non-negotiables, what are maybe, when it comes to taking stock of like maybe how much time you spend online or watching TV, like being able to say, oh, I'm going to take some of this time that I would be doing these other things and I'm going to dedicate it to my schoolwork. Okay, so another great tool that the Ally Center has is known as the Ideal Week Planner. So it's a template for each week that's repeatable throughout the semester. And you kind of want to think about it as like this is the general standard that you want to stick to, knowing that, as we kind of said in the beginning, life happens, things come up, we have to be adaptable. Not every day, not every Monday is going to look exactly the same. Not every Tuesday is going to look exactly the same. But in general, we want to be planning and trying to have general structures in place so that we're getting all of our study time and homework time done each week. So, as we've been saying throughout this workshop, we want to be living within our limits and allocating our time accordingly. We are finite human beings. We need sleep, we need food, we need rest, and those are all good things. But we just have to prioritize our lives to be able to have those things. And so we want to just make sure that we're prioritizing balance. So life priorities should get consistent time blocks in your ideal week planner. So, if you're at work from 9 to 5, then Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 will be blocked out for work on your calendar. If you have your small group for church on Wednesday nights and you have a date night with your spouse on Friday nights, like these are all things that you're going to want to just put in so that you can visualize and see not only where your time is going, but also plan accordingly of, if your small group meets on Wednesday nights, then you're probably going to want to do your more of your homework earlier in the week because maybe Wednesdays are one of your busier days. So you just have to plan for what works best for you and your season of life. So we also want to create time blocks for weekly tasks and creative deep work. So um, if Monday mornings is a really good time for you to get some study and reading time in for the week, maybe from 6:30 to 8:30, you do some study time in the morning before you go to work. That might be what's best for you. Maybe you feel really fresh and awake in the morning and you just want to get some of those in-depth readings done for the week. So that would be a great time to put that into your calendar. So on the ideal week calendar, you also want to state the task. So you can color code it, you can label it how you want it, as long as it works for you. Just make sure that it's clear, what task is in each time block. And then just as a friendly reminder, your course syllabi are available 10 days before the term begins. So 10 days before your class actually starts, you can go into Canvas, you can see your syllabus, you can see what is expected of you, when things are going to be due, how many papers or research projects you're going to have in that class. So it's good to just be able to familiarize yourself with it and plan accordingly and map out your due dates. Another really useful tool through the Minnesota University Library, there's actually an assignment calculator. And so you can plan out, say you have a research paper due in a month, you can put in, it'll put in like today's date, you can put in the due date, and it will give you like a breakdown of like, okay, by this day you should have your topic picked, and then this day you should have your thesis statement and outline drafted. Like, it's really helpful. Now, again, might not work for everyone, but it's a really good general breakdown of like generally how much time you should give yourself for the assignment and the different steps of the assignment. So this is what the ideal week calendar looks like. Obviously the times keep going throughout the day. I only just got a screenshot of like the first half of it, but I think it goes from like 6 a.m. to I think like 11 p.m. And so you can just put in, study time, intentional rest, morning and evening routines, family time, work, weekly commitments, all those things. It's good to just map out and see what your week looks like. any questions on anything that I've gone over so far? Okay. And as I said earlier, feel free to jump in if anything pops up. Okay, so in addition to the ideal week, this is kind of just putting more meat on the bones, if you will, of that ideal week plan. So something that's going to be really important going into the term is scheduling a weekly planning session. Um, it's really good to just kind of sit down and think about like, okay, what went well this week? What are my opportunities for this week? Because I think a mistake that many people make when it comes to reflection is a lot of people just think, oh, I just reflect at, you know, in December going into January, and then I don't really reflect until the next year. Well, like that's probably not the best approach because um, life circumstances change and we want to adapt. We want to continually be figuring out ways to improve, not for the sake of improvement, not for the sake of patting ourselves on the back, but just to really to steward our time well, to glorify God, to and to also live life with a fullness and a joy that comes from planning well and planning effectively and not feeling completely stressed out all the time. So, in that weekly planning session, reflect on the past week of just things that went really well and any opportunities or changes you may want to make. Identify your top priorities for the next week so that nothing sneaks up on you. So, if you know you have a discussion post due Wednesday and an outline due Saturday, you can plan accordingly of when you're going to get those things done. Again, as I've been saying throughout tonight, it's an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. The cool thing about a weekly planning session is you get 52 every year. I mean, you have so many opportunities to go, that didn't work. I want to change this, or that worked really well, and I'm going to keep doing that. So it's just a really neat opportunity to kind of check in with yourself. If you're married, this is a good thing to do with your spouse. You can just kind of check in to see what's working well for both of you and ways that you can support each other going into the next week. And then a really convicting question is to kind of ask yourself, did my actions line up with my priorities this past week? And when I came across this question when I was doing some research in preparation for tonight, I personally was very convicted by that because there's so many times where my actions don't line up with my priorities, where I have things to do and maybe I don't do them because I'm on my phone for too long, or I um, do other things that might be productive but aren't my top priorities for that time. So they might be good things to do, but if I needed to get something else done more so, then I need to focus on that more pressing task. And then something that's really useful, by no means necessary, but can just be useful, is to think about bookending your day with morning and evening routines. So these don't need to be elaborate, but just in the morning a way of getting acclimated to your day, if that's um getting up and having a cup of tea and reading the Bible, spending time in prayer, and then just stepping outside and getting some fresh air and then getting ready for the day, that might be perfect. It might be more involved in that, it might be less so, but just whatever works for you to kind of have just a sense of routine and normalcy going into your day. And then similarly, at night, having a way that you're consistently winding down. So if that's maybe also having a cup of tea and reading a book, reading your Bible, spending time journaling or in prayer, just kind of a way of winding down before you go to sleep, so that you just kind of have like just a sense of um, routine on both ends of your day. And to answer your question in the chat, Linda, this link will be available to look at after the session. I can send it to you when after we're done, so I can send you the recording for sure. So moving from, so we talked about like large scale course planning for the 8 weeks. Then we looked at a weekly, like an ideal week plan. And then if we think about a daily plan, so this is really where it's going to be very much what works best for you. So, and I put this quote in: those who fail to plan to fail, which feels kind of harsh on first read, but there's a sense in which, like, when you don't have a plan, it's really hard to get everything done that you want to get done, and things inevitably slip through the cracks when we don't have a set plan of how we're going to accomplish everything that we need to accomplish. So some people like to have a very time-based schedule. And what I mean by that is, when we kind of looked at the ideal week, some people really like having that, at 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., I'm going to do this reading for this class this week. And that might work for some people. Some people, maybe parents of young kids, things don't always work by an hour by hour schedule. And sometimes people can get discouraged of, like, oh, I didn't get my 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. task done, and I'm just discouraged, so I'm going to give up for the rest of the day. For those people, I would encourage you to have like a top tasks plan. So maybe there's not necessarily like a strict hour by hour schedule that you want to follow, because your life isn't totally predictable. But just to kind of know, like, okay, today I'm going to get these 3 to 5 things done, and they're just going to be my top priorities. When that by the end of the day, I'm going to have these done. And that works for some people. So you kind of just have to figure out what works for you, for your personality and your stage of life. For many people, the time-based schedule provides like really good structure of, like, okay, at this time I'm going to do these things. Some people would rather go into the day and say, I'm going to get these tasks done today, and I'm going to make it work in my spare pockets of time when I'm not caretaking or not doing some other things. So feel free to plan out your days according to what works best for you. So as we've been talking about, it's good to break down weekly goals then into daily tasks. So when you have your weekly check-in, you might know, okay, I have this annotated bibliography due this week, and I have a discussion post and a few other things due. So how am I going to realistically break those down into more manageable, actionable steps of, okay, on Monday, I want to have 2 of my sources annotated for my annotated bibliography. And then on Tuesday, I want to do another 3 sources, and so on and so forth, just to know exactly what you're going to do on which days, so that it all gets accomplished. Something else that's going to be really helpful is just having daily rhythms and routines. These are going to look differently for each person. It's not just about a set formula. People have to do what works best for them in their stage in life. So take comfort in the fact that planning and getting things done, it's not a one size fits all approach, and there's a lot of freedom in that, which is really nice. Okay, just some general time management tips. This whole workshop isn't just all about time management, but I just wanted to kind of throw these in here as just some tips moving into the next subterm. Many students find a lot of success using the Pomodoro technique, and that is where you choose one task to focus on in usually a 25-minute time period. So you might say, I am going to focus on writing this annotation for this source for my annotated bibliography in the next 25 minutes. I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to check my email. I'm not going to do anything else but this one task, and I'm going to set a timer, and I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to do it. And then at the end of those 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break. So you might get up, get yourself a cup of coffee, step outside, get some fresh air, and then come back in for another 25-minute session of maybe another task. So maybe you do another annotation in that next 25-minute stretch. But it's just kind of a helpful way to Just really focus in on one task ahead of you and say, I'm not going to do anything else during this time, and I'm just going to focus. And it's only 25 minutes. It's less than a half hour. It's doable. You can just stay focused. You give yourself a limited break, only 5 minutes. For most people, it's best not necessarily to check their phone because sometimes people just get, sucked into their email to scrolling on social media. But again, everyone has to know themselves best to know what they should and shouldn't do when they're trying to do homework. But yeah, so the Pomodoro technique, it's just those repeated cycles of the 25 minutes of deep work followed by a 5-minute break. And then just continuing to repeat that so that you can focus through and get accomplished all your different tasks. Christina, great question. What do you think is the best way to ensure that top tasks get done and don't get crowded out by urgencies? Okay. So I think it depends a little bit on how we're defining urgency. So there's things that obviously come up and are like very urgent and very pressing. I think especially for people who are caretakers in any capacity, there are things that have to get done day in and day out, even hour by hour, that just have to be done. So it's important that we are um, loving those people well, caring for those people in our lives. So, but I think when it comes to making sure those top tasks get accomplished, it's being able to have, even if it's not an hour, not so, if it's not an hour by hour plan, being able to know that so for example, for parents of young children, if there's a certain time of the day when either the child is napping or doing something else, and there's just kind of like a pocket of time, knowing that in that pocket of time, I'm going to start on my first priority. Like knowing that, like having that priority, that those top task priorities going into the day helps eliminate the decision fatigue of, oh, I have a half hour to work or to do something. What should I do? Like, oh, what's on the syllabus for this week? What do I need to do? What's in Canvas? Whereas when you've had that weekly check-in planning session, you can know, okay, on Tuesday, my top 3 tasks are writing that discussion post, reading that chapter, and meal prepping for the rest of the week. So I know that on Tuesday, in any pockets of time that I have, I'm going to first, I'm going to start with that discussion post, then I'm going to read that chapter, and I'm going to meal prep at the end of the day. And just planning accordingly that like whenever those pockets of time, um, are available to people, being able to the decision's already made of what you're doing that day, and you just have to kind of to do it. Does that answer your question a little bit, or is there anything that I can clarify? Okay, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. And again, I full disclosure, I'm not an expert in this. These are things that I'm working on myself. I have not arrived when it comes to time management or things like this. These are things that I am also working on in my own life. So it's a learning process for everyone to steward their time well, steward their resources well. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you all in this. Um, so when it comes to goal setting for um, for our courses, for our lives in general, we want to make SMART goals. So goals that are specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and time-based. So many of you have maybe heard of this or maybe are familiar with it. So when we're making goals, it's easy to just kind of say, I want to spend more time outside. Like, okay, well, that's a good goal. It's good to um, spend time outside. But we want to say, we want it to probably be a little bit more specific. Okay, maybe I want to take more walks outside. I want to go on more walks. Okay, that's a little bit more specific. We want it to be measurable. Okay, how long are my walks going to be? Okay, I want to take, um, a walk around my block. Actionable. Okay, I can do this thing. Reasonable. I don't want to set a goal that's totally unrealistic for my season of life, and time based. Okay, so maybe for the next month, I want to set a goal of taking 3 walks per week around my block. So I want to set aside the time to, plan that in, and then I'll be able to reflect back and know whether or not I accomplished my goal. So you don't want it to just be like, oh, I want to spend more time outside, or I want to drink more water. You want to have specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and time-based goals so that you can check in with yourself and you can check in to see if you are um, making progress in your goals, and how you're doing. And maybe that are like the reasonable, maybe you realize that maybe the goal that you set was a little too, maybe was a little overly ambitious and you kind of need to scale back. You can do so, and then you can kind of know exactly how you need to modify it in order to make it a reasonable goal for you and your situation at that time. And then when it comes to time management, we definitely need to be having boundaries in our lives. So we want to be, protecting our priorities. And so we want to be protecting family time, time with loved ones, time with friends. We want to be protecting um, our sleep schedule. So if we're invited to a fun event with friends, but we'd be out too late on a work night or something like that, maybe we have to say no, even if it's a good thing, even if it's like a really great thing. Sometimes we just have to say no to be able to say yes to something else. So in this season as students, so much is needed from you in terms of time to accomplish these assignments in 8-week periods, to get these classes done. And so in order to do that, you have to say no to some great opportunities. We can't all be on every ministry team at church and every volunteer organization in our communities. We can't do everything all the time. We have to prioritize what is most important and protect those things, and constantly reevaluate. So at our weekly check-in, just knowing like, where am I, where are some areas that I maybe need to say no more often. And that's hard. It's hard for all of us because, you know, many people like to, be involved and do as much as they can with their schedule, but it's just important that we are prioritizing rest and sleep and meal planning and time outside and exercise and our studies and all the things. So related to that is kind of the concept of self-care. And so I think it's really important that we as believers are talking about it, because we don't want to end on two extremes. There's two different major extremes when it comes to self-care. Some people um who aren't believers might take it to an extent in which it's just there's a level of selfishness. We never, there's just never being inconvenienced by anyone else, never really caring about anyone other than ourselves. We obviously don't want to go to that extreme as believers. But then I think there's the other extreme where we have no boundaries. We don't prioritize our own health or sleep or time, and we just have like zero margin in our lives. So we want to have a biblical balanced perspective of self-care in which we are stewarding ourselves, stewarding our resources, stewarding our health. So that's kind of the approach that I want to take when it comes to self-care. We want it to be biblical. We want it to be glorifying to God. So when it comes to physical self-care, we want to be, exercising and in a way that's enjoyable, in a way that's life-giving. So that might be taking walks outside. That might be finding a group exercise class at the local gym that we really enjoy. So there's all different ways, different workout videos on YouTube, and just different resources that are available to us. And then related, we want to be prioritizing sleep. I think people know what works best for them, but I think it's really important that people are getting adequate sleep at night. And then we want to also be planning out our meals as much as possible so that we're not just eating on the go or on the run, but that we are making a plan and generally sticking to it, and taking care of ourselves in these ways. Emotional self-care. So we want to be making sure that we are taking care of ourselves emotionally and just being aware of how we're feeling. So some ways to do that is to journal. We can journal out our prayers to God. That can just be really like a really great way to just process things and write out scripture and journals. It can just be a really nice way to meditate on scripture, by writing out passages that are, writing out different psalms and things like that. That can be really, really helpful. Something else I would encourage is engaging in a non-work related hobby. Um, so there's just a lot of different, different things that you can take up, whatever you're interested in, whether that's disc golf or watercolor or crocheting, but just learning a new hobby or engaging in a hobby that maybe you used to enjoy, but now you didn't have as much time for, but then you want to prioritize those things. Turning off as much as possible email and work phone outside of your work hours so that you're not constantly getting those notifications that kind of take your mind back to work, but that you're able to just kind of focus on where you're at and rest when you're not at work. And then, lastly, as I just said, prioritizing rest and time with loved ones is just really important. And then spiritual, of course. Um, Prioritizing time in the word and prayer. That's really just so vitally important to our spiritual well-being, and just prioritizing, meditating on truth, focusing on God's word, and letting that really inform our lives and our priorities and our thoughts and our actions and our words. Um, yeah, that's just really the top priority. Living in community, having accountability, and as much as possible, having some sort of personal retreat. So this doesn't need to be an elaborate, finding a cabin in the woods on a mountain. It could also just be going to a coffee shop one day, um, every few months, and just taking some time to just kind of reflect and journal, kind of like that weekly check-in, but like a little bit more in depth and periodically. Or maybe, you go ice skating, or taking time to um, go to a new restaurant or something, just like having a time to just kind of get away, even if it's not like actually traveling, but just taking time to just um, rest and um, just enjoy, good food and relaxation, for a period of time. So, moving forward, when we think about finishing strong, starting well, we want to make a plan to do so. So, um, take this time to just write down three takeaways that you learned tonight and that you'll implement into rhythms and routines for the next term. So just take some time, if you don't have a pen and paper near you, just kind of make a mental note of what are some things that you want to implement. We don't need to be totally doing a complete life change 360, because we want to implement realistic changes. We don't want to just say, okay, starting tomorrow I'm going to change everything. That's not necessarily realistic. We want to say, like, okay, I'm going to implement this tool, or I'm going to fill out the ideal week calendar, or um, I'm going to prioritize getting more sleep. All these kinds of things are just so important to your life as a student and as a person with lots of responsibilities. And um, yeah, so yeah, just take a minute to do that. And since we are out of time, I'll let you think about that, kind of transitioning out of the workshop. So just to review, we defined some terms. We talked about what really contributes to academic success. We took some time to reflect. We went over the tools of the course calendar, the time audit, the ideal week. We went over some time management tips and resources, um, some ways in which we can care for ourselves and steward the bodies and minds and relationships that God has given us. We took just a second to make a plan moving forward, and then just know that in addition to the writing services that the Ally Center offers. We also offer academic mentoring appointments. And so if you want to have an appointment to go over like a course calendar for your subterm, feel free to make an appointment to do that, because we have consultants who would be happy to work one-on-one with you to just make this plan and work on some time management skills and things like that. Just some of my references, and yeah, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to stick around. I want to be respectful of people's time, so if you have to go, feel free. But I'd also love to hear, if you guys have a minute or two, just any key takeaways that you had from tonight, or just general feedback. I'd love to just hear from you. That's awesome, Christina. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, those are great. Anyone else? Any key takeaways that anyone would like to share? Okay, well, that is all that I have for you. Oh, really quickly, let me just drop the link in the chat to those resources so that you can download those documents if you're interested in those items. So this is where you can get those documents that I pulled up tonight. And we even have, like, in addition to those kind of more time management resources, we also have just some other academic self-care, studying and learning, and then we also have like writing and research and reading resources as well. So there's a wealth of information on our library guide through the Ally Center. So thank you all so much for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a blessed rest of your subterm, and that you go into the next subterm feeling refreshed and ready to take on those courses. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.